Hi, everyone. This is Monica Duran, State Rep for House District 24. Thank you for joining us today. I want to let all of you know, too, that you can submit questions. They will be confidential, so don't worry about any of that. And I'm really excited to be here with two amazing, I call them friends, and strong women. And just happy to have both of you here. We've heard a lot through the last several months how COVID has affected domestic abuse. And as a domestic abuse survivor myself, I feel it's really important that we kind of answer a lot of those questions, get a lot of resources out there, and kind of share a little bit about our stories. So I think I'm going to start with Erin Baer. And thank you for being here, Erin. Appreciate you taking the time and appreciate you sharing your story with us today.
Thank you, Representative Monica Duran. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for hosting this broadcast and talking about domestic violence, abuse, and all of the things that go with it. So my name is Erin Baer. I am an author, speaker, and survivor myself. I survived domestic violence and sexual assault over 11 years ago here in Colorado. And people asked, the victims, why do you stay? And it's more of, why do they choose to abuse? And it's really hard when you're in that situation to just up and leave. There's so much that is invested in a relationship, and you always think that you're never going to find yourself in an abusive situation. And then when you do find yourself in an abusive situation, it's very lonely, it's very isolating. And the way I got out of my abusive situation is something just snapped inside of me and finally said enough is enough. And that is the scariest time for a victim to leave an abusive situation, because they could potentially be beaten again, such as I was, or they can be killed. And it's a very dangerous thing. And so sometimes it's easier to walk on eggshells and just survive another beating than it is to find the courage and to find the strength to leave an abusive situation. And I am here today to say I survived, and I am one of the lucky ones, just as State Representative Monica Duran and many hundreds of thousands of other people. But there are those that are not so lucky. There's already been several deaths, with this COVID-19 crisis of victims of abuse. And it's really sad. And that's why we're here today. And I want all of those that are listening, we're going to give you resources and strategies on how to leave if you are finding yourself in an abusive situation. And also for those that are survivors and you're having triggers, I want you to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, because I'm here to show you that your voice matters, your story matters. As I mentioned, I'm an author, and I wrote a book called From Beaten to Badass, and I talk about my journey through my life of abuse until the tipping point, and how I got out and how to give others hope, strength, and courage. So that's why I'm joining State Representative Monica Duran and then Lydia from Violence Free Colorado. And I'm so honored to be here. That's just a little bit about my story, but I want to really dive into what we're here about, here for, and really show everybody that this is a crisis within itself. So thank you.
Thank you, Erin, so much. And I think you made two great points, right? When people ask, why don't you leave? Like it's just so easy to get up and go, but really, actually, when you make that step to get up and go, you better be prepared. You better have a plan. You better have a path, because a lot of abusers see that as their moment to end your life, right? Or to threaten to end your life. So you have to be very, like I said, you got to do that. You have to be able to plan. And I also wanted to bring up two other points. And I think there's 3 steps to abuse with an abuser. I think the first step is they try and charm you, right? It's like the seduction stage, they charm you. The second step is isolation. This is how it was for me: charming, isolation. And then the third step was intimidation through threat, whether that is intimidation through threat with a gun, or any way that they can kind of intimidate you. And these are kind of the things I wanted to talk about also, that I have found in talking to survivors, those 3 common things: the seduction, the isolation, and the threat. And I think, Lydia, you can give us some great examples of what you've heard through the work that you do. And if you can just kind of tell us, you're with Violence Free Colorado. And if you can tell us what you're hearing now, especially through COVID, and what you're dealing with, and the resources and the shortages too of resources out there.
Great. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for having me. My name is Lydia Waligorski, and I'm the Public Policy Director for Violence Free Colorado, which is the state's domestic violence coalition. And so most of our members statewide are domestic violence programs and our agencies that are dealing with this head on and remain open and accessible to help survivors right now. And so Representative Duran, as you mentioned, isolation has really, gone into hyperdrive in terms of we're supposed to be isolating now for public health reasons. And so what this pandemic has done is exacerbated existing needs and exacerbated and highlighted existing gaps in services and resources. But through this all, programs have remained open and programs have remained accessible. They have switched to as much online and telephone support as they possibly can, but we also know that one size doesn't fit all for survivors, and so that people that need in-person services, people that need to go to court, people that need to access safe shelter, those resources are still open and available as well. And so while they may look different, they are still open, and you are absolutely not alone through this. And so while sheltering has remained a critical piece of domestic violence services for some families, we know that it's not the only way that people can access services and help. And so reaching out to confidential community-based advocates for support, maybe that is just exploring what your options are, maybe that is getting a safety plan together, maybe that is reaching out to see what you can do to protect yourself through the civil or criminal court system. And so we have advocates that are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The national hotline is answered in over 200 languages and is available to get you to the nearest domestic violence program that is closest to you that can meet your needs. And so if you take away anything from this webinar today, I want you to know that you are not alone and that help remains available.
So Lydia, can I ask you, you're talking about mobile services. What kind of mobile services do you have or are available out there?
Yeah, so mobile advocacy is the notion that, not everyone's going to be able to come to a brick and mortar shelter. Not everyone is going to need to come to or be able to come to an office space to receive services. And so over the last several years, advocates have worked to meet survivors where they are and to work with them in the community. And so, right now, the safe spaces that people, you used to be able to go to work and use the computer there. You used to be able to go to work and use the phone or drive to work and call for help that way. And some of those are just not available to people right now when we're limiting for essential travel. However, two really important things. And so, places that you can go. And so, you can go to pharmacies, you can go to grocery stores, you can ask to use a phone there. You can talk to your pharmacist and ask them for a referral to the national hotline or other places if you can't access that number or the services on your own. Certainly, as well, being able to reach out when you have those moments is certainly helpful. And then, whether an advocate can meet you in person is something that you can reach out to and try to arrange. But also, we have moved to providing hotels and hotel spaces for a lot of people that we cannot maybe accommodate in shelter due to social distancing right now. And so advocates are really amazing at helping you find ways to access services. And so, certainly reach out when you're in those spaces and figure out something that a way to contact that makes sense for you. It doesn't have to be your own phone. It doesn't have to be your own internet. We know that tech safety is absolutely important. And so, reaching out when you can move is certainly helpful. And then keep in mind that even though we're at stay-at-home orders for a few more days in some of our communities, leaving to flee domestic violence is absolutely okay. You don't have to stay. That is not in any way against the stay-at-home orders. And as several other countries have experienced similar stay-at-home orders, governments, including our state of Colorado, has made it implicitly clear that you can absolutely leave if you need to leave for your own safety.
Thanks for bringing that up. I also want to thank Governor Polis because he had mentioned that in a couple of his different conferences that if you are feeling unsafe, and you can't stay home, that you can seek help and shelter so that you feel secure. And let me ask you another question regarding the hotel vouchers. How long are those good for, and how often can you apply for those?
Thank you for that. And so right now, this is a case-by-case basis. And so we are able to use some emergency funding through the Federal Victims of Crime Act. That is through another agency. And hotel vouchers, can range up to 14 days. They can take a few days to get into place. And so it is important to reach out to your advocate and be working with them to get that safety plan in place. But it is certainly achievable and possible. After those 14 days of sheltering, if you don't have any symptoms, you can explore whether or not coming into one of our shelter facilities is available to you. But it's not just a one and done thing. Depending on the pot of funding that the programs are using, it can be limited, but at the same time, advocates, again, are super creative and will work within their existing resources to help make something happen.
Okay, great, thank you. What I want to do now is we're getting questions rolling in, so I'm just going to kind of read some of them off. And Erin, I've got one for you. One question here is, if you suspect that somebody is going through a domestic abuse situation, how would you recommend the best way for them to reach out for help? What avenues or resources would you offer to them?
So for me, I would definitely tell everybody, if you do have somebody that you suspect is in an abusive relationship, come up with a plan with them if you can. If you say, just text me something off the wall, remember when I talked to you about the sky was green? That's going to give them a clue that they need to get you help, or they need to call the police or do a welfare check. They don't have to go over themselves, because obviously we don't want more people in danger. But if you have a friend and you suspect that, or they've told you in the past that they're in a bad situation, then you can come up with a plan. If something off the wall that they text, that that's a flag and you need to act quickly. For those that are in the abusive situation, if you can go to the grocery store, or say you need to go to the doctor because you suspect that you're sick and you can go alone and say you need help. Reach out to people and start talking off the wall. They're going to know something's up, and really know that you're not alone. There's a lot of people that have been where you are, and you are going to be okay, but we have to make sure that you do it safely. And they can also, reach out to me, and I can then get a hold of, Lydia, or you, State Representative Monica Duran, and some of my resources that I have. And I am more than happy to be that person, just be a friend, because I'm not associated necessarily with a specific organization. I'm just somebody on Facebook, right? And so they can always reach out to me. But reach out and, definitely let us know if you need help, and tell your friends and your family. And I think those that are in abusive situations, I think your friends and family might suspect anyway. So talk off the wall, and that'll give them a clue to check in on you.
Yeah, that is so true. I think the number one thing is just breaking that silence, right? For myself, I kept it silent for years. I didn't share with anybody because I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. So in being ashamed and embarrassed, I isolated myself even more and gave my abuser even more control. But once you snap, as you called it, all of us have a moment where we just snap, the light bulb goes off. And we start talking, and that's what you need to do. You just need to start talking, because then you can get the help that you need so desperately. Thank you, Erin. I've got a question here for Lydia. It's a little long. Let me read it here. Okay. Let's see. I just saw an article regarding charging someone who is not wearing a mask with a misdemeanor. So for someone like me, who has been subjected to domestic violence and has anxiety over getting enough air, because one time she was strangled, and wearing a mask causes that anxiety to raise, I can now be charged with a misdemeanor? Honestly, is this a one-size-fits-all? So Lydia, in a situation like that, what would you recommend?
Sure. First off, that is a completely normal trauma response That is absolutely valid. In 22 years, I've worked with a lot of people that have experienced strangulation and suffocation, and that's normal. That's absolutely normal, and you're not alone in that reaction. I would say that the need to wear masks is probably something that is going to continue for a while, and that to do the best you can. And whenever you are ready, there are, while there's no one size that fits all in treatment, there are treatment modalities that have really helped people with that, that certainly your local program can help you explore, whether that is EMDR treatment or cognitive behavioral therapy. There are therapies that can help you deal with that, but that's totally normal. And I think do the best you can, where you can, and just keep it up and know that you're not alone, and know that you're not going crazy, and you'll get through it.
Right. Thank you so much for that, because I know that causes more anxiety. You're already feeling some anxiety, and that just compounds it even more if you're worried about that. So it's really all about their safety first and foremost. Okay, I've got another question here, and let's see. Lydia, let me ask you this, because I'm getting a lot of questions regarding what are the most effective ways to decrease BB fatalities. So what would your suggestions be there?
I obviously work in policy and larger policy spaces, and so I will tell you broadly that we have a strong feeling that, and the research bears this out, that if you do, if really you address these three things, you're going to end a lot of fatalities, right?
You still there? We may have lost Lydia.
She froze.
She froze. Okay. Well, while she's coming back, Erin, let me just ask you some questions here. So when you were going through your abuse and the things you were dealing with, what did you find gave you the most strength during that time? I mean, how did you survive that?
I literally looked forward to going to my job every day, and unfortunately some people don't have that today. And so, going to my job or trying to go out whenever he went out, because then there was other people around. I knew I would be safe if I were to go out with him. And unfortunately right now we're on, shelter in place. The hardest part about being in an abusive situation is they do isolate you from your friends and your family. And so you're not allowed to be alone with anybody else because they are jealous, or they think that they're going to be found out, and then, the victim is going to be taken care of by the friend or the family member. So I would say if you can get out of your house and find a job, even if it's an essential one, and I know it's a little dangerous right now, find a job and get a job, or say that you're really sick and you need to go to the doctor, because we don't have those options right now. But when I was going through my abuse, it was checking in with my job and getting as many hours as I could, and getting as many jobs as I could. I mean, I worked 4 different jobs. I worked every day, all day, because I was able to get out of that situation and not be so isolated. That's the hardest thing right now. And that's a challenge that really breaks my heart, because so many people aren't essential that are stuck in these situations.
Yeah, that's so true. I think for my situation, oh, Lydia, you're back. All right, let me swing it back to Lydia so she can
Absolutely.
finish the question. All right.
Sure.
Lydia.
Sure. So I was talking about higher level policies that can help reduce fatalities. And so 1, getting firearms away from abusers. 2, aggressively prosecuting strangulation and suffocation. We know that if someone has experienced strangulation in that relationship, they are much more likely to be killed by that partner, period. If you really aggressively prosecute those crimes, you decrease domestic violence fatalities. And then 3, economic supports for survivors are absolutely critical. And when I talk about economic supports for survivors, I talk about things like safe leave and safe time and paid sick work days, access to the courts, access to protection from abusive litigation, and then the right to work and to have and keep your job, whether or not you've experienced domestic violence, sex assault, and stalking. And so economic supports are absolutely vital, and those are some of the policy things that we work on at Violence Free Colorado, and thankfully with the help of Representative Duran. So
yeah, that is so. Thank you for that. That is so true, because in my situation, obviously it was a little while back, but we didn't have as many resources as we do now. But the bottom line is I still lost my job, right? Because you're taking time off, because you have to connect with different resources, you have to find a place to live, you have to find a job, and you have all of these things already working against you as you're trying to start your life over for yourself, and lots of times we have children. I had a son, and losing a job and my only means of supporting he and I caused me to be homeless. So it's just like a vicious circle. So I think we really need to, and good point, take a look at what we can do now so that survivors are successful. Because the number one reason I found when I was in the shelter that women came and went back was financial reasons. They couldn't financially take care of themselves and their children. And that's not okay. You're choosing between going back to your abuser or not being able to take care of your family. You'll be out on the street. Those are some pretty damn hard decisions to make, and no one should have to make them. So I'm just thrilled and excited really to have this conversation. And I know we have to wrap up because our time's almost done and we just barely touched on things. But you know what? This is the first one. And I hope, if there's a demand and people want us to continue doing these, I would love to do them. A couple of reminders. If your questions didn't get answered, because we have a lot of them, please email them to me at monica.duran.house@gmail.com, and we'll get those answered. Also, we've got some resources in that should be visible to you. If you're in need of help, if you're in need of talking to somebody, please reach out. If you have any questions, you can reach any one of us. And I just want whoever's listening out there just to know that they're not alone. Break your silence and remember that life can be better. You do matter. Your life matters. And we are all success stories here. And not that we did it alone. It does take a village. It did take all of you and people I didn't even know that helped pull me from what I call the depths of hell to where I am today. So thank you all for, Erin, thank you for being here. Lydia, thank you so much for all the advocacy that you both do, the conversations you're having, and shining the light on domestic abuse. And thank you for being here today. And we'll see each other soon.
Thank you for having us.
Yes,
thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for representing all of the survivors and victims at the state level. That's huge and that's important. And with your voice, you're raising all of our voices up. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. It's my privilege.
True honor.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.